What's going on, everybody? Esports are growing in the world today, and on this episode of the Game Time Guru, I've got Jordan Moorhouse joining me to discuss the business side of esports. You don't want to miss it. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
What is up, everybody? Welcome out to episode 50 of the Game Time Guru podcast. I'm your host, Shane Larson. And first off, I want to thank everyone for supporting me all up until this point. This is episode 50. It's been over a year that I started this podcast. I've been trying to stay consistent with it. And like I've said in the previous episodes, greatly appreciate the support. So if you could, please make sure to go find me on iTunes and leave me a review if you can, and share it with your friends and family. So today, I've got Jordan Moorhouse, good friend of mine from way back when. How long have we known each other, Jordan?
Oh, God.
This is a trick question.
26 years, 25 years, something like that. I don't know. Like early on elementary school, I feel like.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Yeah,
okay.
Your dad was my basketball coach, Y-ball. It was your dad and the Monks.
So 20 years.
Yeah, it's been a
20
while.
plus years. That's a long time.
Yeah, we've known each other for quite a while. Went through elementary school, middle school, high school together, and we're still living in the same city and friends still. It's great. And Jordan, why don't we get a little bit of a background about who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of get into this discussion. So who's Jordan Moorhouse?
Yeah, like Shane said, we've been friends for a long time. You know, I grew up here in Meridian, Idaho. Now currently a real estate advisor for Amherst, Madison, and Boise, and do commercial and residential real estate, and really enjoy that, and really enjoy the business side of real estate. So yeah, I just realized that this was the 50th episode, so congratulations, Shane.
Thank you.
Listened to a lot of his podcast shows, and this is kind of a cool milestone for him. So congratulations, by the way.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
It's because of people like Jordan, so make sure you're doing what Jordan does. Listen to it in the car rides, whatever you got to do, so you can argue with me, and then maybe one day you can chalk it up with me on the show, and we can argue together. So, Jordan, you just mentioned that you're a real estate agent. What did you call yourself?
Real estate advisor.
Advisor.
Yeah.
Real estate advisor. Okay, you like the business side of things, and that's why we're going to be talking about the business side of esports today. But let's talk about gaming in general. Like, why is it a topic of interest for you?
Well, one of the things, I grew up playing video games, as most kids did in our generation. I remember getting my first gaming system was the N64 for Christmas and just being so excited. And then I remember like when GoldenEye came out.
Oh yeah,
it was like
dude,
the real
N64?
Yeah, the N64.
Yes.
It was like the real first person like shooter that it wasn't on PC, that you could have 4 players and battle out with against your friends. I just remember being a blast and literally spending hours with my buddies, just going around and being mad that somebody selected Odd Job because he was shorter than everybody else, so you couldn't shoot him as easy. Yeah, and it was just a really fun game. But yeah, so I grew up playing esports, or I guess just video games.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually had an opportunity to serve a mission for my church in South Korea.
Okay.
And that's where like the business of esports like just blew up in my mind, and I was like, holy cow, this is going to take off. And so I was there in 2006, 2008.
Okay.
And, kind of saw the future of esports because, in my opinion, South Korea like pioneered esports.
Okay. How so?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick example. So one of the games that I've played in the past is called League of Legends.
Okay.
I think it's been mentioned on your show when
Right.
you talked to Vope. And that, like, I'll give you, so League of Legends is really big in Korea. Really big.
Okay.
And they're sponsored by like Samsung and SKT, and SKT is like the equivalent of AT&T or Verizon here, one of the biggest cell phone providers. So like big time investors there in Korea for their esports teams. And then like when I was there, and this is that's currently, but when I was there, they also had like dedicated TV shows to StarCraft tournaments.
So this is on like
this is
normal
like,
television.
Yeah, normal television, and it's like 24 hours StarCraft. And like people that know StarCraft know that the Koreans were like legendary for it, and like the World Championships always had Koreans against Koreans.
Interesting.
And it is interesting because like I don't know how Koreans are so good at video games. I don't know what it is, but it's like their drive. Like anytime you meet a Korean and there you have a passion for something, they go all in. And some of them like video games, so they go all in. And I don't know, they're just crazy good at it sometimes.
Did you ever get the opportunity to like game with anybody while you were there, or were you not gaming?
No, I never gamed with anybody there. I just knew of people. So it's another interesting point is, so in Korea, houses are pretty small.
Okay.
So they don't have like a den or anything like that where they have like their computer set up.
Okay.
So they would actually go to a place called a PC bong.
Okay.
Which is like just PC set up to play video games.
Okay. Similar in Brazil. I got you.
You could see these all over town, and it actually became like an issue sometimes because people could spend like 24 hours in there. And so they had to put like certain regulations on it saying like, okay, you can only be here for a certain amount of time.
I got you.
Because people could be like consumed and addicted by it, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, I just thought it was really interesting. I remember seeing for the first time and like, you know, just walking by and you could look at this like computer cafe and there's like 50 kids in there just playing video games.
So funny because that's what you meant when you said PC bong. I didn't even know what you were referring to. It's called a LAN house when you go to Brazil, and that's the only way you can use the internet. Basically, you pay $5 for an hour, go in there, and that's how we had to write our emails to our family. We had to pay $5 to write emails.
That's so interesting.
Freaking stupid, but yeah, that's how people would game. And then it was the same thing with like when I was on my mission in Brazil, it was 2008 to 2010, because obviously I had to leave after all my friends was younger than everybody, so it sucked. Anyways, when I was there, Guitar Hero was huge. It had just like skyrocketed in the United States, but when we got there, nobody could afford a console like an Xbox 360 or anything like that because they were $2,000 there. So in Brazil, the electronics were extremely high, so you had to go to the mall to play Guitar Hero. So they'd get at the mall, they'd have a Guitar Hero set up. You pay $5 and you could play it, and it was like 30 minutes at a time. So you just see tons of kids like circling around. Anyways, it's kind of interesting how other countries do it. So you had the dedicated TV stations, the PC bongs in Korea, and you started noticing that this was kind of the beginning of the
Well, I just saw how like these big companies were investing in it, and like literally they would have like a tournament where you'd have tens of thousands of people watching it live, like in a stadium. So you have teams playing against each other live in the stadium, and everybody can see like the screen of what's going on and seeing the live action.
See, I've seen those on TV. Like I've seen shots of them before. I've seen that. It's interesting to me. Like, why do people get so invested in it though? Like all these people, why do they want to even go and watch a live?
Well, I think it's like anything competitive. I think, right?
Right.
Like I'm a competitive person, and so that's why I always played video games too, is because I wanted to compete and achieve something. So like even now when I play, like I do some first person shooters nowadays, like like PUBG Battlegrounds, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, or whatever it's called. But it's essentially a survival game where you parachute in and you try to be the last one to survive. And for me, it's all about the competitiveness of it, right? And so I think people enjoy seeing top players, just like we like, sports, right? So we like to see top athletes perform, and it's just like, holy cow,
Yeah.
Like year and a half ago or whatever, I went and saw the Warriors play the Jazz.
Yeah.
And to see Steph Curry in person just launching threes from 30 feet, and you're like, holy cow, how did that go in?
Right.
So I think for people that aren't necessarily into athletics or something like that, but they want to still have some competitive juices, this is kind of a way for them to get involved.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I see these competitive gaming things, and it's crazy knowledge, it's crazy skill. I mean, their hand-eye coordination, you might be able to laugh about that, but they still got to control the keyboard and the mouse, and they have to have crazy fast reflexes to pull off the things that they do.
Right.
So it's not to say that, it's a different type of mindset and athleticism, but they're still competing at the highest level.
No, for sure.
So I think people like to just watch that entertainment factor of people competing at a game that they enjoy at the highest level.
I gotcha.
So in Korea, that was like StarCraft and now League of Legends and other games. They get packed stadiums of 20, 30,000 people, which is incredible.
You know what's funny is like I used to make fun of people like this. This is why I'm like so glad that I was able to do this podcast. A couple months back, had Scott Vope on here. He was talking about eSports. Now I got you. I've got friends like yourself, and then obviously our others that are gamers. I've kind of opened my mind a little bit with it because I used to make fun of these people. But now I find myself like I'll watch YouTube videos every once in a while. I'll catch either a Facebook video or a YouTube video of people playing Fortnite, and I suck so bad at Fortnite. Like I can't. I panic. I start shooting. I don't know how to do that stuff. But I see how well like how well crafted they are. You know what I mean? Like they put time into it, even though some would say it's a stupid game. They put time into it, and you'll see how they do different things and how cool it is they can build so quickly, run up this thing, shoot these people, like jump down this hole, shoot this guy with a shotgun, like the way they time it. It's kind of cool to see it. It's like you said, people that are good, like very skilled at that particular craft. It's kind of cool to watch them at the highest level. So it's like me watching LeBron James or someone else like that, like live. You're like, okay, this is really cool to watch. So I get that. I'm starting to open my mind up to it a little bit.
Well, another thing too is I think esports caters to a larger demographic, right? Because athleticism is not something that's just given to people. It takes a long time to become athletic, and sometimes, let's just be honest, genetics has to play a huge part in that, right?
True.
But gaming is something that pretty much anybody can do. Like Fortnite, you mentioned Fortnite. Right. I know a ton of high school kids that want to play with their buddies, and there's a social aspect to it as well.
Okay, the social aspect,
but,
all right.
But like right now, it's a really popular game, I feel like, against high school age kids and a little bit older adults. And so, you have these games that come, and they're kind of trendsetters.
Okay.
Like, think about Pokemon Go. You remember when that first came out?
Yes.
Everybody was walking around town playing Pokemon Go.
All over the place.
It's crazy, right? It's like something that's, these video games now are becoming part of our social society. And so Fortnite right now, I feel like, is one of those big games that everybody's kind of playing right now. And I'm with you there. I'm awful at it. I don't understand the building aspect and all that stuff, and I've only played a little bit into it. But it's interesting because it's the competitiveness of people, and more people can compete at a video game than they can on the basketball court or on the football field. So I think the demographic is there to make esports really big. And I think that's why you have a lot of investors starting to look at that saying, okay, we can make some money here because it's a big demographic.
Big demographic. So it's a big pool of people. And you mentioned, okay, so Korea, you thought it was like, the beginning. Now let's transition it over to the United States. What are you seeing in regards to the esports world in the business aspect in the United States? How are the investors getting into it? Who are some of those investors, et cetera?
Yeah, one of the things, like there was always been like PC tournaments, right? And they were always kind of at a smaller scale. And I'll give you an example. Like there's a big tournament, I think a couple times a year, called the Intel Extreme Masters.
Okay. And
that's a bunch of different games that are worldwide, right? Like CS:GO, Counter-Strike, Global Offense is a big game kind of around the world. And so they had these tournaments that, were all across the world, but now it's starting to become mainstream, and it's starting to be on a regular basis where they actually have scheduled leagues. And, I think that really started with like League of Legends here in North America. League of Legends is a game that, it's a 5v5 game. So there's a team aspect to it, and there's individual roles. So you'll have like a jungle player or a mid player and somebody that's at the top lane, and there's lanes and stuff like that. So they have these roles, and team play is really big into that. So you have these teams, and League of Legends was made in America.
Okay.
So you have these teams, and it started off with the World Championships and that type of stuff, and then it evolved to these leagues. So now they do a spring split and a summer split, and they have regular attended events, I think in California, where people go and watch these teams play in league play. So it's every week on a certain day, and they also have a European league now for that same game. And that's just kind of a small way that I've seen these leagues develop here in the United States.
Okay.
And I think it's going to continue to grow. Another one that I'm not as familiar with, but is Overwatch.
Okay.
And Overwatch is one of those kind of first-person shooter games, but it's a team aspect thing. And they're starting to have leagues, but they have leagues dedicated out of certain cities. So like Dallas has a team, or Philadelphia has a team, right? And
really?
So they go compete against each other now, but they represent a city. And a lot of these, teams have big corporate sponsors nowadays, which used to be, you put a team together and you'd pay your way or something like that, but now they got big time money.
Okay, so explain this to me then. Do you happen to know off the top of your head, they might have these corporate sponsors, these investors are putting a lot of money into these tournaments and stuff like that. Are the players themselves able to make any kind of income off of that?
The players are making money because they get a pool of the sponsorship, stuff like that. And they also have a pool of the earnings, right? So when they go win a tournament or something like that, then they get a pool of that money. And then they also have, individual, content creator things that they could do. So they could be on Twitch or they can be on YouTube, and they get, a percentage of their downloads or whatever, their views and comments and all that type of stuff. So these professional players, you're talking six figures for a lot of these guys. At the high end, you could be talking $1 million+ a year, and it's that's big business, you know.
That is a big business.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, like you said, Twitch. There's YouTube. There's so many outlets for this. Do you think?
Twitch,
go ahead.
Twitch hasn't been around very long, right?
Right.
But you know, Twitch just sold to Amazon last year.
Who hasn't sold to Amazon?
Yeah, but Amazon, Amazon paid $970 million for it.
My goodness.
So Amazon clearly sees a potential in this, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, YouTube and was obviously bought by Google, and so these content creators, you know, are able to use these platforms to make some serious money.
Dude.
And it's becoming an entertainment industry.
My goodness. Do you okay? So like we know that in the United States, obviously, Twitch is a big one and YouTube is a big one. We have kind of like that freedom to look at these things like online, stuff like that. We have that freedom here. That's kind of our main outlet for finding these and watching those things. But do you see us coming to like dedicated television stations, kind of like Korea?
Oh, I could definitely see it. You know, ESPN, you know, you go to ESPN.com and they have an eSports section.
Yeah, that's true. Now.
You know, and so I'm sure at some point they're going to have some of these TV stations. You know, I'm sure they're already on cable. I don't know of them personally.
I probably don't know either.
But I'm sure there's already TV stations on cable that are playing esports on a regular basis. In fact, I think TBS, had a couple of hours or something like that dedicated to some tournaments at some point. You know, TBS is a pretty big station, right?
Right.
And so I think it's going to continue to grow. I really do. And I think as you continue to see more and more sponsors getting involved in this, you know, it used to be a nerd thing, like you were talking about before. You know, it used to be like, oh, nerds play these type of games and stuff like that. But I think the demographics there to continue to, I guess, expand esports and to make it a really big, profitable entertainment center.
Do you think that with the growth of esports, though, is it going to hurt like the youth coming up as far as like athletic sports, such as, you know, your typical football, basketball, baseball, those types of sports? Do you think we're going to see a decline in those and more people, you know, migrating towards esports because there's no head injuries, there's none of that, this and that?
You know, I don't think so. I think those people that are still wanting to get outside and be, you know, the typical athlete, I think will still happen. You know, I think there's other barriers that are inhibiting some of that. You know, when we were kids, we just go out and play sports, right? But now you have traveling teams that starting at like age 6.
Yep.
Which to me is, I think they might be overdoing it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a whole nother subject, but like, I don't think esports is going to interfere with that stuff. I think the athletes are still going to be out there playing sports and stuff like that. But how many kids go out and play sports is definitely declining.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt about that, right? Because we used to get home from school, and we didn't play video games. We went and played football or basketball after
school. Played in the snow. Right? We played basketball in the snow sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
So
we made up our own rules, how many steps to take.
I think it's, as a society, we've definitely shifted, but I don't think we blame that on esports.
Okay.
I think kids are different nowadays, and I think technology is different. So that's what's driving that. But I wouldn't say just esports in general is creating that.
Oh, for sure. One thing I wanted to touch base on while you were talking, it kind of just sparked in my head. With esports growing, with the amount of, you know, high-profile, I guess, esports athletes, whatever you want to call them, these gamers, you know, they're coming up. There's this issue with performance-enhancing drugs, which is, some people think that's ridiculous, right? But I actually saw a documentary on it. I don't know if it was on Netflix or it was just a quick little discussion on E60, like ESPN, something like that. But it was talking about, you know, people using Adderall. And it was becoming such a big issue because now you've got scholarships that are being offered for esports. You've got a lot more going into the esports world as far as sponsorships and all this stuff, and people can make a lot of money doing it. Do you see this possibly becoming a problem? Because like in normal sports, like we had like the Mark McGwire era with Sammy Sosa, like the steroid era in baseball. You've got the issues going on with football. Everyone's taking steroids. Everyone's trying to get a head up like on the other person. Do you think that this could potentially be a problem with people abusing those types of drugs if this continues to grow?
Well, here's, I guess I have a hard time with this because my stance on steroids might be different than most people.
It's probably not different than mine. I think just let them take them. But that's my
that's my personal opinion too. Because like professional sports, what is it? Right? It's entertainment.
It's entertainment. Yeah.
So who doesn't want to see somebody hit a 550-foot home run? Right? Like when Mark McGwire was crushing it and having that battle out with Sammy Sosa, like who didn't enjoy that?
Right. I don't even like baseball, but I just watched it.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most gratifying things was to watch, you know, Barry Bonds hit one into the pond or whatever like that in San Francisco in the Bay. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And you got guys in boats out there trying to find the baseball. Yeah, exactly. Like
over.
Who doesn't enjoy that, right? Who doesn't enjoy a guy throwing 105 miles per hour? So for me, professional sports, like, it's an entertainment, right? So if they're gonna I guess if they want to do that to their bodies, and I don't know the science behind the steroids too. Like, obviously you can abuse it just like anything else, right? You can abuse it, but do I think you could take it in moderation and be okay and also enhance your ability? Yeah, but that's a whole other subject, right? So in my opinion, like for these esports guys, like it's entertainment.
Yeah.
So let's watch them perform at the best, and whatever they're doing, like, as long as, some of them might, I don't remember the statistic, you might know this, but like they asked Olympians, right? Like if you could take something and it guaranteed you a gold medal, but you died excuse me, but you died in 10 years, would you do it? And it was like 70% of them said yes, right?
Okay.
Or something like that. I don't remember the exact statistics.
I don't remember that.
Look it up and correct me on some other show or something
That's
like
fine.
that. But that's what most Olympians said, right?
Okay.
So clearly they're willing to sacrifice that to be the best at something at that given moment.
Right.
So for esports athletes, like I know that there's like glasses out there that are supposed to help them see better and be able to look at pixels differently or something like that, and so I'm all for it because it's an entertainment thing.
Right. To go along with this a little bit more, I was going to talk about the training aspect of it all too. With the esports people, they're trying to compete at a high level. These guys are crazy. The ones that are playing some of the games that you mentioned earlier, it's insane to see what they're doing. And I actually watched another thing. It was on MTV years ago, but they were talking about like these people were traveling, and it was a team. I don't know which game it was, but there's 5 people on each team, and they were training. They actually would stay up all night long. They'd have 3 hours of sleep, but they'd stay up all night long, and they actually had physical maps that they would, they printed off of the game, and they'd talk about their strategy. They're going through, seriously, I'm not even kidding, each one of them would have 5 Red Bulls. That's when Red Bull was really, really getting like flying, early on in its career too. So like when Red Bull first launched as an energy drink, and they were drinking 5 Red Bulls a night, getting ready for their tournament, sleep 3 hours, go to their tournament, and they're smashing more Red Bulls while they're playing because they have to stay all up on the game and make sure that they're like there can't be any lag. There can't be like an attention deficit, which is why they started taking Adderall, because they started thinking that was like a little bit better, a little healthier for you than the Red Bulls. So in my opinion, I say if they're going to take Adderall, let them take it. I think it's a lot better than pumping your heart full of caffeine and have that possibility of screwing you up.
Well, you bring an interesting point. Like, so for athletes, right?
Right.
Like we can't overtrain. You can't train for 12 hours a day, right? Your body just won't do it to be at a high level. But these gamers, right, it's not necessarily a physical thing. Like they do have certain mechanics physically that they have to be able to do, right? But it's quick motions and movements. Right. But it's a mental aspect. And these guys do, like you mentioned, they train 12 hours a day and just crazy stuff like that. And it's totally mental. And that's the impressive part about it, because you can't just go be a professional gamer. It's years and years of training to their craft. And people might say, oh, that's just silly. Well, that's the case, and guess what? There's video game players out there making $1 million, a year easy. Some of them probably $1 million a month, on YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that. And these content creators, because people want to watch them play because they're either good or they're good at entertaining.
Yeah,
and so it's a lot of training and preparation that goes into these guys, and especially at the team level when you're competing at that highest level week in and week out.
Right. Now let's go back to the business side of it real quick. Talk about some of the investors that you saw this earlier. We were talking before the show, but who are some of the investors in the U.S., like big names that we know of, that have started investing into?
Yeah, I just remember like when I was watching League of Legends, and this was a few years back, one of these new teams came out, and it was called Echo Fox. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool name. And then I dug into it a little bit more, and I found out that Rick Fox, former LA Lakers.
Gross.
Yeah. But he invested and bought this team. And now you have other investors, I know Shaquille O'Neal is invested into a team. I know the Philadelphia 76ers bought an entire organization dedicated to esports.
Jeez,
so now their team management, their NBA team management is now managing these esport teams.
So trust the process, right?
Exactly. Trust the process, right? Isn't that what Embiid? Who did he recently text though? That said, "Come over."
That was LeBron, I think, wasn't it? No, maybe it wasn't.
I can't remember. Anyways, just trust the process. Exactly. So now but I know Ashton Kutcher, Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, right? Shaq is investing in these esports teams, and I think it's going to continue to grow.
And people think those guys you just mentioned right there, Shaq, Magic Johnson, they think those guys are just dumb jocks. Shaq's one of the most well-educated professional athletes, retired professional athletes that I've actually ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
As far as an education, going to school, investing, he's actually extremely smart when it comes to investing. And Magic Johnson, obviously, he's done his part as well when it comes to the investing into, obviously, sports.
So get this, though. Not only, so Magic Johnson, though, obviously we know the organizations that he's associated with, the Dodgers, you know, and I mean, he's big time, but here's his investing partner that he is also associated with. He's invested with Tony Robbins.
Okay.
So that group is the one that is going and investing in these teams like Team Liquid. And it's interesting because it used to be you would have individual teams for each sport, right? For each esport. So like League of Legends would have these teams and Overwatch or whatever would have these teams. But now it's coming to the point where like Team Liquid has teams in every major gaming sector. Okay. And they're all under the banner Team Liquid. So it's not like these are individual teams, but it's becoming organizations that then sponsor teams for each league.
Crying out loud. Okay.
So that's, you know, so like Tony Robbins and Magic Johnson, when they invested in this organization, it's not just one team. They're investing in multiple teams, multiple video games, but it's one organization.
Okay.
So that's why I think it's growing in the U.S. because you have, you know, high-powered names investing in these organizations that are putting out multiple teams for essentially every video game that's played competitively.
Okay, so the business person in you, this is Jordan Moorhouse. Now we're going to be asking you.
Yes.
So we've got all these different types. Okay, you can invest into a 401k. You can invest into this or that, like real estate. You can invest into, you know, cryptocurrency, or you can invest into eSports. If you could invest right now into eSports, what would you even start with, though? Like, let's talk about that for a second. Like, well, this is cool. We got all these people that are investing in sponsoring eSport, but like, if we wanted to get into it, maybe sponsor somebody, where would we start?
You know, I don't even know if we could, honestly.
Okay.
I've never even looked into it. Maybe, you know, what would be cool is find an organization that would be ran through crowdfunding or something like that, right?
Dude.
So you could like find a team, an organization that is sponsored by 100 different individuals or 1,000 different individuals. That'd be pretty cool. But for me, it seems like all these esports teams are being bought out by big time investors. So I don't know if the little guy's even able to get in on
Can't
this
even play
right
the
now.
game.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
but then you have the content creators from like YouTube or Twitch, right? And I feel like a lot of small-time guys are going out there and making a little bit extra each month by doing those things. And then eventually, I guess the dream is to hit it big where you're making, you know, $10,000 a month or whatever like that, where that becomes your full-time job.
Okay.
I know there's a ton of people on Twitch where that's what they do full-time now, or YouTube. They're just, you know, content creators.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And that's what they do for a full-time job, right? Because and that's the thing. People look at video games as just, oh, nerds just playing video games or whatever like that. No, it's now become an entertainment industry. And people want to watch the highest level players or just entertaining people play video games because of the entertainment factor.
Right.
So, I mean, as I look at it, it's now a sector of Hollywood or a sector of, you know, mainstream sports.
Right.
You know, that's just where it's heading. And I think it's going to continue to grow.
Does that go into your two sides of gaming discussion that we were talking about earlier? There's two sides to gaming.
Yeah, there's definitely there's the mainstream, or I guess not mainstream, but there's the esports, right, where it's a competitive league week in, week out, and then there's the individuals that play games.
Right. Okay.
You know, and I know of former professional players that did play in those leagues that have retired, and now they stream on Twitch or YouTube full time, and now that's their full time gig, and you know they probably make, you know, $250,000 to $1 million a year.
Gosh, dude. What are we doing? What's the point of this podcast?
Honestly,
not
I don't.
$250K.
But I don't want to dedicate the time to become that good because that's the thing. Those guys have been playing for years. I don't know. They've dedicated a lot of time, and I guess it's paying off for them now.
And something interesting about streaming as well that I learned from Scott Johnson, who was on the show, we mentioned about him earlier, was that there's an art to actually streaming well too. You have to have the right setup to be able to like get it all put together that's actually appealing to the eyes of the people who are watching.
Well, I just found out recently too, these big time streamers, they're not streaming off of one PC, but they have multiple PCs that are connected together to create high quality content.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because a lot of times they don't want to make sure that they can perform the latest video game. And then they want to be able to make sure that quality is streaming out at the highest quality at the same time.
Jeez,
So a lot of these CPUs and these graphic cards, if you're trying to run all of this stuff all at one time, can't do it.
Can't handle it.
So they have a game that plays the video game, or a PC, and then they have a PC that's streaming it. So
Holy cow.
you're talking $4 or $5 grand easy into these setups. Because then they're talking about high quality cameras and high quality sound equipment and all that stuff. Yeah, to these high level streamers, I bet you they have 6,000 to 10,000 in their setup easy.
Man, that's insane to me. Yeah, dude. There's a whole art to it and everything like that. So there's so much time and dedication that goes into it. People don't just pick up a controller and just go to work kind of thing. There's a lot more that goes into it. One last thing I want to touch base on with you is regarding the scholarships. Now, I brought this up before, but since it is now becoming a varsity sport in regards to major universities, Boise State just introduced that as well as a varsity sport, so you can now get a scholarship to play video games. What are your thoughts on that? I want your thoughts. Good, bad, whatever. Just general thoughts on it becoming an option for people to actually they can go get schooling.
Well, let's go to the stereotypes of video gamers, right? When you picture a video gamer, what do you picture?
I'm just gonna be completely honest. I'm thinking greasy hair. I'm thinking fat. I'm thinking someone who has jeans and ripped jeans that hasn't gotten out of the house, long hair, long fingernails, just looks gross and just sits in the house.
Exactly. Stereotypically, that's what we all think, right?
Right. I sound like a complete douche right now.
Yeah, but somebody that lives in the basement of their parents' house or something like that.
Right, exactly.
But okay, they like video games, but now I guess you give these guys an opportunity to go get a college education for something that they were passionate about. And I've heard of these guys that go on scholarship and they're computer program majors or something like that, computer science majors, whatever like that. So they're going to get an education and they're still doing something that they enjoy, and there's that entertainment factor there, right? Because I know that there's college championships for some of these games where you can go win a national championship in eSports,
right?
And I'm sure that's bringing in some revenue for the university for those teams that are competing.
Exactly.
I don't have statistics or numbers.
I'm sure that's the case, though.
But exactly. So why not? If the university is going to capitalize on it, why not give kids an opportunity to go get an education for free?
Dude, I totally agree with you on that one, and I've kind of switched my stance on this as well, man. I thought it was kind of weird at first, but I'm like, realistically, if we're going to break it down, people would always say, well, why do basketball players get to have a scholarship? Oh, well, it's because they bring in money. Well, we just talked about the business side of esports. There's a huge potential bringing in a ton of money, probably more so than soccer. Women's sports altogether are typically in a deficit for any university.
Yeah.
The two main sports are men's basketball and men's football. Or football, I should say. Football and men's basketball usually make up the difference for all the other sports that are a deficit.
Well, the funny thing, too, is that it's probably not in the arms of the NCAA, right, which is under fire right now. So, yes. Title IX and all that stuff doesn't apply to that situation. But honestly, the NCAA, that's a whole nother discussion that would take an hour and a half. But, let's just give these kids an opportunity to get the education and represent their school and have some fun with it.
I totally agree, man. I totally agree. I like it. I like your stance on that. We're not arguing too much today at all. Actually.
I know, this is interesting because as you mentioned before, I told him I was driving in my car listening to the podcast, and I could just argue with him over and over again.
He doesn't agree with me. Jordan doesn't agree with me in regards to a lot of things, especially LeBron James, that whole discussion.
LeBron James.
Jordan loves LeVar Ball.
Oh, God. I know. Yeah. that was going to be a podcast I wanted to be a part of.
Maybe we'll do that still because it's still actually a very interesting
You know
topic.
what, though? I'm surprised of how well they're doing in Europe.
Yep.
And I wanted them to go there and get destroyed, but it's not happening.
Yeah, they're holding their own, except LaMelo just got himself hurt. So.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
That's too bad for him, but whatever. LeVar's a punk. I can't stand that guy.
It is what it is. So let's do this. To finish up, Jordan, let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
What's your favorite game to play?
Right now, Battlegrounds for sure.
Battlegrounds.
Yeah.
What's so good about Battlegrounds?
I just like that competitive, so it's a game where it drops in 100 people.
Okay.
And it's last man standing wins. And you have to go around and find guns and find armor and that type of stuff. And there's some vehicles and you can drive around. And it's just kind of that survival of the fittest feel, but it's a first-person shooter at the same time. And it's just... I can't explain how rewarding it is when you win at the end of the game and you're the last guy alive. And for me, just being a really competitive person, and I see that I'm the last person standing, it's like, yep, that's right, I did it. And it doesn't happen very often where I win, but it's just that competitiveness that I just really enjoy.
I like it, the competitiveness. And the last thing I want to touch base on here, I keep saying that, but this is really the last thing. I had Matt Jones on the show last week. He talked about how gaming is his second passion outside of fighting. He's a professional fighter, but he games. And the reason he games is because it allows him to relax his body and stimulate the mind. So anything that he can do to relax his body and stimulate the mind. Do you find gaming to be similar in that nature, to be able to, you come home, you got, a wife and kids, you got a full-time job, you're working. Can you come home and just relax by doing that? Does it help you that way? Keep your mind fresh, but body as well?
It does, it's two parts, right? Like we mentioned, I get that competitive juices out of me, but then I'm just a carefree almost, right? Okay. And and it's interesting you mentioned that, because I know that Mighty Mouse, why can't I think of his name now? UFC fighter, Mighty Mouse.
Oh, Demetrius Johnson?
Yes, he's a big time guy on Twitch.
Is he really?
In fact, he streams a couple times a week, I'm pretty sure.
No kidding.
And anyways, that's just kind of a side note. And I know Gordon Hayward, plays a ton of video games, but I completely agree with you. It's kind of it's doing something where I'm still getting those competitive juices out, but it's kind of relaxing at the same time, where I'm not worried about work. Right. And, like we mentioned earlier, I'm not able to do it as much as I used to, but it's still kind of a way for me to have some of my own time and enjoy going around trying to shoot somebody and be the last man standing, I guess.
There you go. I like it, man. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. Hopefully you learned something new about the business side of esports and enjoyed just the chalk it up discussion that we had with Jordan. Jordan, thanks for joining me for the show. Hopefully we'll do it again, right?
Yeah, congratulations again on the 50th episode. That's huge. If you haven't gone and subscribed to Shane's channel, please do so. It's just been an enjoyment to go. I drive around a lot for work, being in real estate, and listening to some of those podcasts and just arguing with them about some stance in sports. So if you haven't subscribed or followed him on his other social media accounts, do so.
Yep, exactly. I'd appreciate it, guys. If you want to disagree with me, make sure to subscribe and follow. And for all you guys out there, we'll talk to you next week. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.